Hey everyone, in this video we will explore how to write a data frame into a JSON file using Spark and Scala. I will be using IntelliJ for writing this code. I have already created an object named write to JSON and initialized a main function inside it, and I have also created a Spark session variable named Spark, and at the end we have this spark.stop function. If you are not aware of this Spark session variable and spark.stop, please consider watching the previous videos in this playlist. All the code that I write using Spark and Scala will go between these two lines. Let me first create a sample data frame for writing into JSON file. I am naming the sample data frame as data. We got an error here while using 2df function because we need to import spark.implicits to use 2df function. Let us run a show command on top of this data frame and see how it is getting displayed. Now I am running this code. We can see that the data frame is displayed correctly with IDs 20, 21, 22 and 23 and corresponding names and DOB. I am commenting out this data.show, and now we are going to write this data frame into a JSON file. For writing a data frame into any of the file formats, we use the data frame writer object, and the data frame writer object can be accessed by using dataframe.write. In our case, the data frame is data. You can use a data.write followed by the format of the file that we are going to write. In our case, it would be dataframe.write.json, and inside JSON we will provide the target path. In my case, the target path is target followed by JSON output. Let me execute this code and see what happens. And the execution finished successfully. And now we can see that there is a folder named JSON output created inside the folder target. And inside the folder JSON output, we have our JSON file, which appears as a part file. If we look inside this file, we have our data written in the JSON format. And the data is IDs 20, 21, 22, 23 and corresponding names and DOB. In Spark, if we write any data frame into any of the file formats and provide a path, it will be written as a part files inside this path. If you want to write as a single file without any part files or without anything, we need to do some workaround on top of it that we will discuss in the upcoming videos. So now the data is written into a single part file. The reason being we are running only one worker thread, which we have mentioned inside here. We are mentioning local one. We can run as many worker threads as we needed. If I change it to two worker threads and run the same code again, we might see some different number of part files inside this folder. And for executing this again, let me first delete this folder which already exists, and now run this code with two threads. Now data is written successfully, and we can now see that we have two part files. The first part file has first two rows and the second part file has the other two rows. The reason being data is distributed and executed in Spark. So when we mention two threads, so the data frame will be distributed for those two threads, and those two threads will be separately writing the data into our target location. That is why the data is not directly written into the file, but instead it is written as a part files inside the folder that we have mentioned as target. When we are running Spark in local, we can mention star to tell Spark to use maximum number of threads as possible in that machine. Let me delete this folder again. I will tell you why I am deleting these folders. And now let's execute with the local star as number of threads. You can see that output now has four part files. and each part file has one row. We have four part files because it can create maximum 4 threads for this code. So when we mention star, it will create the maximum number of threads in the local machine. In our case, it is 4. Now what I do is I will try to execute the same code again. Without any change, I am executing the same code to use this data frame and write it into the target location which already exists. This time I got an error stating that the path already exists. The reason being the JSON output folder already present and we didn't tell Spark how to handle if a path is already exists. In order to handle that, there is something called save modes in Spark. We also call them as write modes. We have 4 write modes in Spark. First one is overwrite, the other one is append, and the other one is error if exists or error, which is going to be the default mode, and that is why we got an error when we ran it for the path that already exists. And the final one is ignore. We will see all these modes one by one, and we can mention these modes using the mode keyword after the data frame writer. So after data.write, we just provide mode followed by save mode equals overwrite. Now in this case, save mode overwrite will delete the existing folder and it will create the new folder. It will basically overwrite the new data. Now for identifying that, let us try to run with only one thread so that we will get only one part file and it's very easy for us to verify. And now I am going to execute this, and what should ideally happen is this folder should get deleted with all the 4 part files and a new folder with the same name should get created with only one part file. As you can see that the older data is deleted and it created a new file, and the new file contains all the 4 records. It contains all the 4 records because we have mentioned only one thread and it created only one part file. So that is how override save mode will work in Spark. And the other save mode is append. This append save mode will just append the newer data to the existing data. Let's say that we already have the folder which is JSON output, and if we are writing the data into the same folder, the existing data will be there, and along with the existing data, new data will also be appended. So let's say that we already have 4 rows in the existing data, and now if we try to write 4 more rows, let's say that we are using IDs 2, 3, 4 and 5. Let's say that we are using the IDs 2, 3, 4 and 5 and running this code again with append mode. What happens is this file with the older data will be existing as is, and a new part file will be created that contains the new 4 records, which means that the same folder will have 8 records, 4 in each part file. You can see that one more part file is created, and the other part file has IDs 2, 3, 4 and 5. So append mode works like this. You might get a doubt like, so now we have appended the data and we have all the data in this folder. How can we read the entire data at the same time, right? Let me comment out this line for writing, and now let's try to read this data and see how many rows will get displayed. In order to read the data frame in Spark, let's name it data.df. We can use Spark reader object, which is spark.read, and provide the option header as true. followed by JSON and path. Our path is going to be this entire folder. If you want to know more about reading a JSON file in Spark, watch my previous video. I'll just run datadf.show. Now I am just reading this target folder and going to see what will be there inside that folder. You can see that it has all the 8 records. So initially we had 4 records, then we ran this code again with the append mode. It added 4 more records, and when we read the data, it has all the 8 records. So that is how append mode is going to work in Spark. Now the other mode is error or error if exist. This is the default mode that we have seen in the beginning when we got error. And the other mode is ignore. If we use ignore mode and write data, it will not do anything. Let us say that we are writing 12, 13, 14 and 15 row numbers into this path. Even if we run this code, as this folder is already existing with the ignore mode, it will not do anything on this folder. It will just ignore this write command. Let us try to run and check. I have run the code and the code is successful. But if we look at data in these two files, it contains the older records 20, 21, 22 and 23, and the other data 2, 3, 4 and 5, and we don't have any other part files. And the data that we have tried to write is 12, 13, 14 and 15, which is not present because Spark has ignored writing this data frame, because we use the save mode ignored, and we try to write into the path that already exists. So this is how we write any data frame into a JSON file in Spark using Scala.